Building Information Modeling, or BIM for short, is a wonderful tool to create great architecture. Unfortunately, many might believe that BIM is out of their reach. This is because adapting from 2D drafting to BIM might seem time-consuming and costly. Also, it seems that BIM means a whole new workflow and methods which you need to learn from scratch, and the new requirements and legislations may seem too complicated to follow. Our mission behind ARCHLine is to open a gateway to BIM. ARCHLine makes the transition from 2D drafting to BIM step by step. It takes you from 2D to 3D modeling and introduces BIM parameters to your workflow. Sharing your projects with other professionals is effortless. The software makes sure that you can use your already existing CAD skills, files and projects to stay competitive. The gate is now open for new challenges and previously unavailable projects. ARCHLine is an out-of-the-box IFC-certified BIM software. No extra plugins are needed to complete your project because your design will contain everything in a single file. You will work together with other parties of the building industry seamlessly. Avoid misunderstandings. Use real products. Collaborate better than before. BIM is quickly becoming the standard. Make sure you are there with ARCHLine.
Hello and welcome to the ARCHLine webinar, Lighting and Visuals. My name is Zoltán Tóth. Over here is my colleague, Mr. Illés Pap, resident architect.
Hi there.
Today's topic, as all the other webinars that we had so far, is going to be broadcasted in Italian as well, courtesy of our partners in Italy. You can check out the show at 5 p.m. I posted the link to the show into the comment section. Today is actually the fifth and final round of our Gateway to BIM webinar series. We had quite a lot of interesting topics so far. We had a topic on how to create buildings from scratch, so using your skills and the ARCHLine feature set, how we built up a 3D model, and then we looked at how to use external architectural data. Then we got some documentation out of it, sections and elevations, obviously.
Yes.
We looked at the BIM skill set, and now is the topic what I think is the one that covers all. What happens when you're done with your model, you're done with your documentation? How do you bring this model for a presentation to your clients or whoever ordered the job from you?
So and technically speaking, we don't only talk about the photorealistic visuals. We talk about visuals, so we will also cover other type of visual endings. I mean, ways of you can visualize the model, not just rendering.
And that just highlights that ARCHLine is being used not only by architects but also interior designers, furniture manufacturers.
Yeah.
So rendering and visuals, I would say, is a common link between them because all of them want to show their projects in a very spectacular way.
Yeah, it's actually that's the same BIM model, just from a different view, a different aspect. I will also show a few things that is technically speaking also is a difference when we create a visual from outside and from inside the model, but that's for later.
Yes, I think the best point to start this discussion would be as a warm-up, we would show you a couple of renders that were actually made with our software and with the exterior renders as well. Let Illés talk about this a little bit.
Well, this is just a quick selection of images rendered out of ARCHLine models. Some of them were rendered with internal render, the integrated renderer, which is from Redway, a company creates the rendering engine. And some of them are created with exterior renders. I will also show you how you can export your model to or your perhaps existing exterior render. And as you can see that the project types are various. You can create a small project, you can create a large project, you can create industrial, you can create residential, you can create a school, you can create a shop or any other or interior. So it really depends on the project, but it's never limited from the side of ARCHLine and of course from the side of visualization. So as you will see with this model, we will try to somehow introduce that.
Yes. So this model could actually be familiar for you. That was the sort of the example project that we used for almost all the topics that we wanted to discuss so far. So before we actually talk about rendering, because that is a huge topic, I think there's one issue what we should cover. We frequently talked about how to bring in information from external sources, one of these sources being Google Maps and Google Earth. Now, a lot of you asked us what happens on the other end of this process. So how can you bring this information what you just designed in ARCHLine back into Google Maps?
Yeah. Yeah, well, actually, that's one type of visualization when we talk about, like, for example, conceptual visualization. Now, this model is a simpler version of what we achieved earlier with all the details and everything. And this is what I will first show you how you can position. We actually covered that part, but I think it's worth just polish this knowledge.
Yes.
And then I will show you how you can visualize this model on Google Earth. So first things first, ARCHLine is directly connecting to the Google Maps service. You can use it for free. It's either accessible from here. If you go to BIM and you set up the project parameters, you will find the project location. Now this location can be set 3 ways. The last one is only the north direction, but the other 2 is actually setting up the location either by selecting the view from a city list or by setting up the project location in Google Maps. Now this also you can find in the building node here in Google Maps, and you have all these options here. Now first, this project location. When you would like to set up the project location, you can go on to Google Earth, and either you already find something similar to what you would like to select, because Google finds your location and positions the marker by default to the location where you are, or you can just simply type the address. Like in this case, we use an Austrian city part for this location, which is an empty building site. It is
so that is going
address.
to be the address where we are going to put our building on.
Yes, so I just type this address and it finds it. Well, actually we are already there,
Yes.
So it just refined the position, but this way you can make your marker appear at the location where you would like to place your building. One certain point, which is called the project origin of the building, that will be located over there. If this map view is not enough, you should just simply zoom in and find a satellite view and then position it. So that's the empty field, the empty building site that I'm talking
Yes.
about. Let me just zoom in a little bit more. So I just place my building somewhere around the corner of this site, and when I hit OK, that way I actually set up the building location.
Okay, where does this information store? I saw that it's for the project parameters.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth noting that this is one of those BIM parameters that will
Yeah.
carry over with your project. So
Yeah,
if
that's
you-
right.
If you were to send this project to somebody else via the IFC format, that data would be part of the documentation.
Yes, that's right. So if you communicate in an IFC format, where you already know from the previous session that it's not a document, not a 2D drawing, not just a model. It's all the information. This is also part of that information, aside with all the others that
Yes.
you actually typed in or somehow you filled in your project. So now this location is there, so everyone else can use the same location. But to test whether it's proper, you can use this second option, which is the import map as raster image. So actually we saw that map, and using this option, I can just go there. I don't even have to search the field, because this way it already locates the proper site. And then I just zoom in. It's important to zoom in to the view as much as you want it to be cut off, because that's how the import will work. Everything outside this frame will be cut off. So if I zoom in, I will have a more detailed raster image imported. So now I just simply say, okay, let's import it, and I should apply the north direction because I already set it. So yes. And then I will see whether I like the result or not. Now, why is that here? I can't find the building in the location where I specified
we did
it.
specify where we wanted to.
Yeah, we did it, but it's not appearing there. In this phase, if I did not take care of the project origin, it's normal. I did not set up the project origin. Let me just erase this. So somewhere here, remember it was someplace here.
Yes.
So if I erase this, then I see the project origin uncovered. So actually the software did everything well. I just forgot about setting this to the right top corner, for example. This option can be found many ways, but let me show you, let me highlight one feature of this interface here. If you forgot where you can find the command, because for example, as for me, I don't use the project origin command very often, but I know there is an option like that. So I just type that project origin, and then the software will find it to me. And it also teaches me that it's actually in Edit, Move, so I should find it here in Edit, Move, and that's the relocate project origin. So now I need to set up the project origin someplace where these two virtually intersect each other. So then, yes, okay, let's recalculate this whole thing, and then let's import it again. So I go back to the building, Google Maps, import map as raster image, and then I just repeat the same steps. So let me just quickly go back to satellite and zoom in. I think this will be fine. And okay, and now everything should appear fine because now the north direction is okay, the location is okay,
yes, it's nicely,
and everything is fine. If I would like to refine it, I can of course repeat this step as many as I want. But now that I'm done, I just would like to visualize this actually on Google Earth. Before we do that, let me mention that actually you can also import the terrain as well.
Yes.
Like not just this flat ground, but also the terrain with
the height values. If you
yes.
remember during the first show, we created a terrain from two-dimensional data. This is somewhat similar. So in this case, you would get the map as you see it as a raster image superimposed onto a terrain.
Yeah.
But now let's see how this works sort of backwards, getting this model out to Google Earth. One benefit of being able to export that to Google Earth is that way your clients can take a look at the project in the actual surroundings without having to install any complicated products or CAD software, because they just have to download Google Earth and just open the file, right?
Yeah, that's right. And there will be one more advantage which I will show when the model appears on Google Earth. So. To be able to export this, well, I actually need to go here and say that I would like to export the 3D as a KMZ file. KMZ is the format that we need now. And yes, then let's just export it, and then I just override the previously created file that I have here. Yes, create, and yes, replace it. Yeah, and this is an important question. If I already tested the terrain, I don't need to export the terrain itself because Google Earth is a big terrain model, so I don't need to overexpose them on top of each other.
Duplicate them.
Yeah. So I just say yes, please keep the terrain, and then it actually generates the file, and then I can go to Google Earth, which I actually opened here, and then I can open that. This file is in my libraries here, so I just double click here. And then what happens, Google Earth zooms into that area as much as needed to be able to see this model, how it appears.
Where is it actually?
Yeah, so that's the question. Where is my model? I actually positioned it there, but what happens here? Now, because I did not set up a very important value, I cannot see the model. Let me first show you how even then you can fix this, and then show you what I should do to change this to the better. So actually, there's the model here. It's in the temporary places. So I have my model. It's okay. I have this project appearing here. But if I right-click there and I say, okay, let's see the properties, and let's see the altitude of this model, because that's important. It's not set properly. I don't know what's the proper height, but certainly this altitude is not correct. So what I should do, I should just select the clamp to ground instead of that and say okay, and then it appears just as fine as necessary.
I see.
Now it's there because whenever I move it, it will be also always clamped to ground. Even if I place it here, I can actually move it. So
yes, is there a way to fine tune it? I think it should be rotated a little bit. So.
Yeah. Well, see, for example, here, as you mentioned, perhaps I need to tweak it a bit.
Yes.
I just do the same thing again. I go to Properties, and when this Properties dialog appears, also a few of these markers appear. So if I click and drag the center point, I can move it someplace else. I can also rescale it, which I nearly never do. But with this one, I can actually rotate the model. I can refine its position. So if I was not that accurate, or this this satellite view is further developed, further updated, and there is a slight difference between what I used and what happened after that, then I can use it. And actually, there's the advantage that I wanted to show you, that, see, the surrounding is modeled. It's not everywhere on Earth, but where you can access it, you will have a nice 3D surrounding literally surrounding your building with all the details. Some place a bit rough, but it's a very good approximation of what will happen here.
It's a good way to visualize how the project is actually going to look like on that exact location.
Absolutely, absolutely. And here, the other thing, what should I do to avoid this mispositioning in ARCHLine? For that, all I have to do is to go back to ARCHLine. Let me just minimize this and go back to ARCHLine. And what I did not do here in the 3D, we actually talked about this when we covered the terrain.
Yes,
so here in the 2D, I can change the settings for the levels, and there is this very important value, the building elevation above sea level. I believe there we should use something around 300 and some meters. But it was not set like that. So actually, if I would import the terrain, and then on the terrain I position the building, it would actually automatically solve this issue. So in that case, I would have no issue like that.
Yes.
But if this happens, no problem. You can
this
just
is how
fix
you can remedy
2
it.
ways. Yeah. So that's about the building visualization.
Yes, that's about how to
Google Earth.
put the project back to sort of reality. Now, another huge topic what we have to cover today is rendering itself, but I think that depends on two major topics. So how your renders turn out, as far as I see, it depends on two major factors. One is how the lightings are set up and how the material settings are being managed.
Yes, that's right.
Let's proceed one by one. Let's first look at the lighting issue, because as you know, you are able to model lighting and lighting effects in ARCHLine, but perhaps you can tell more about them, how they work?
Yes, well actually rendering is all about lighting and materials, just as in reality. If you would like to take a photograph, light is essential. You won't see anything if there is no light. So you can already set up how the sunlight is coming in. We covered that part in an earlier session. Now let's talk about the artificial lights. We actually have a few already set here. These are lamps. But the difference between these and regular objects is they are not just represent a body of a lamp, but they are also having something that we call a light source, which appears like a bulb here. Actually, you can have several light sources, multiple light sources for one object. And the rule is that if you have an object, you can add a light source by simply going to its local menu and say lighting and add edit light source. Now, by going here, you can actually make changes. You can select this existing one, you can add another one, you can change this, you can go to the libraries and you can find something that you like. You can also create your own light sources, and if you have those IES files, those factory standard measurement files, you can use those. Those will be the most realistic, those will give you the most realistic result at the end always. But if you don't have them, you can use the built-in default light sources, which will have a very good result as well. So now, actually, how to test whether it's fine. For this, you should always create a render. Now, talking about rendering, there are several options here, and for this reason, one of the most interesting way of creating rendered image is the integrated rendering.
Yes.
And also integrated rendering has two options. One is for the finals. This is for the final images, and this is for the real-time draft, which I use in between to create my work, my draft renders. So what I do, I just simply set up a smaller resolution. And then I think I will just leave these options as they are, because I see that they are everywhere, they are fine. Just to cover a little bit of these, actually this is why I will see the light sources. This is why I will see the sunlight coming in. And this is why I will see something that we call bump mapping in ARCHLine, and this will give the materials that you set up this way a nice surface feature effect that you can turn on or off, and of course the background that we can see here, that's something that you can set up. So let's just create a render, and let's see what happens then. And actually, this is what always happens. The software generates the model, it gives it to the renderer, and renderer opens in a window if it's integrated, or if it opens in a new application, a separate, a totally separated application, which you can then handle besides ARCHLine.
So now I could do something else in the software, and I don't have to keep this thing in my view. I could put it somewhere else, right?
Yes, yes, because this is like a regular, normal ARCHLine window. You can go back to the 3D. You can just click on this switch views icon, and then it will be organized aside with all the rest. So why is it real-time draft? It's real-time draft because whatever I do here, it auto updates the view in the rendering, which is very handy if you are about to set up lights, for example. Let's see how this looks like if I turn it off. If you have a light source like this, if you have a lamp like this, you always have an option at the left-hand side, which is giving you the opportunity to handle it as an object, which it is. And it also gives you the opportunity to handle its light sources. If it has multiple, then you can handle them together by simply turning them on or off, and then you will see the result in the 3D real-time draft.
So it's actually the rendering window which shows you the lights as well.
Yes, yes, yes. And actually, it's literally a draft. It's not for finals. You won't send these images to your clients. You will send the finals. But what you need at this point to have a very quick approach of what will happen in the final image, but in the final image, less crispier and much brighter, much like an enhanced version of this, what we see here.
So that sort of saves a lot of time for you, because that way you can see instant results for your settings, and you don't have to spend too much time doing final renders and realizing that you have to change something.
Yeah. It's you know, that time is over when you just create something and wait minutes to realize that everything is
something was missing.
Something that you need to recreate. Well, actually, if you would like to create light sources, there are many ways. If you would like to create lamps, there are many ways. First, I will show you how to create a new lamp to this place, which I actually erase now. And now I show you how you can create something like this, for example, here. This here is an LED strip that we can find here in the 2D window. Let me just erase this. This is an LED lighting. So I just erased that, and
the draft updates automatically showing you that now it's gone.
Yeah, actually, this is the same if I would have turned it off. But now let me show you how you can actually create that, because I think it's a cool thing to do. Here in lighting, there's the LED light strip. This tool is very simple to use. You just set up the first point, and as you can see, it's like literally like drawing a linear item, like a balustrade or a railing or something like that. So I actually can create a U shape or something like that. When I hit enter, then the software creates that. I can set up the intensity, the dimming. I can set up some nice orange-like color. I can enable or disable this whole thing. I can set up the cross-section for this actual profile, what I can see here. I can also change its size, and I can also change its material. So see, I changed its color to orange, but it's not orange, because what we see here, when it's off, when it's not lighting, or it's not in a situation when we can see it's light, then it will be represented as, in this case, a chrome surface. So let's just create that, and don't forget to set up the relative elevation, which is measured from the floor now. It's 2,000, perhaps 600. And let's say, okay, let's just create that. So the software generates it here, and it also generates at the top. So what you will see, you can change the intensity. This way, it's right away out of the box. It's well, actually, what I'm working on, it's an i7, so it's a quite powerful computer. But in a less powerful environment, like in an i5, you will also get results in seconds. So that's why the real-time draft is a wonderful thing.
Now, how about adding additional light sources?
Yeah, adding additional light sources to objects and turn them into objects plus light sources equal lamps, you need to first, for example, let's just download something from 3D Warehouse.
Yeah, the 3D Warehouse we refer to quite often, actually. This is one of the external libraries from where you can bring in data.
Yes, and actually I could use the BIM libraries as well. I can import things from the BIMobjects.com or Cadenas or other sources. The way is the same. So you just find something. I think what we use, I think it was swing table. Yeah, I just took note here. It's a swing table lamp. I like that. I already
I think that one would fit the project.
I think this, it's something that fits the design. And then, well, you find something like this, you think you like it, you just go download and then just go with the latest because...
Okay, do they have built-in light sources or how would that work?
They don't, but the software can generate based on a very simple rule. Let me just place it here. I just placed it on the floor, so it is literally on the floor. So let me just select that and then elevate it. I just use this up arrow and I just use the, I'm sorry, maybe here, I'd say elevate here. So I just place it on top of the surface of this furniture.
Nightstand.
So as you can see, well, actually this has a light source, but it's not because it had a light source. It's because ARCHLine, when it downloads something from the 3D warehouse and the object is named like something light, something lamp. Or so the name contains something that suggests that this should be a lamp, then ARCHLine will automatically attach a very simple light source to the bottom of this model, and from there you can easily elevate to someplace else. So that's what I will do. Actually, I can see something here at the right hand side. Let me just zoom into the model, and then as you can see here, there is something, and it's from this lamp. If I would turn it off and on, I could see that this is disappearing. So it's actually because it's here at the bottom. Mm-hmm. If I just click here, then the software changes to the light source, and then I can just pick that point, click on it, move, and then elevate it someplace inside the shade.
Yes.
Now, when you position something like this, take care that you won't end up in a solid body of something.
Yeah, so put it right in the shade and not.
Yeah, like I could put it here, but of course in that case I would end up with something not
one
realistic.
thing to ask here, you said that the software recognizes certain elements and assigns light sources to them automatically. I have two questions regarding that. How can you change the light source that the software assigns to the lamps? Mm-hmm. And how can you add additional sources of light if the software, for whatever reason, maybe because of the naming, fail to add the light sources?
Yeah, well, actually, that's the same thing as in the beginning we created or we did it. We just select the item, either in 2D or 3D. It's doesn't make any change. You just go to the lighting and edit light source. So in that case, you will end up with the same dialog. You can also refine its position here. You can also set up a top view and see, well, it's quite off the center, so I just place it someplace here in the center, and I can check from different views. And then if I would like to erase this, I can erase, I can change it to select something else, or I can add the new one, or second, the third, or anything, like it's a chandelier, then I can add multiple light sources. So, well, this way it's done, and then the software will update it accordingly.
Perfect. Now, let's talk about so this was the lighting side of things. We are going to refer back to this topic, but let's proceed with the finishes and materials, because I think that's the other factor which has a large effect on how your renders turn out. So what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, actually, the selection of your choice of material will not only change the realism of your rendering, but it will also change rendering time, because the more complex your material is, the result will be calculated longer as well. But of course, many times in sacrifice of the quality. So what can we do here? Let's start simple. Now we have an imported object which has colors and textures on it, but they are not necessarily set well. So if you would like to find a material, like I would like to represent this as something like a copper surface or gold or something like that, in that case I right click here and I say find the material. The software will find that material for me at the left hand side, and as you can see, it is set to be general, no reflection or very small reflections. So that's why it's not like a metal surface. So you can go to the libraries, the types, and you can just change this type to something else like metal. And by default, it will be very, very much like chrome, but you can just change its reflection. You can remove a little bit of this reflection, and in that case, the color will just face the surface, and you can see it much better. You can also make changes for materials appear inside. If I zoom in, I can change this material, but I think it works pretty much well. But if I would like to turn this into something like, again, a metal, I just right click there, find it, and turn it into a metal surface. So that's how I can do that. But actually, setting up materials, it's also about importance. So in reality, I wouldn't start with tiny materials like this. I would leave it to the end. And first, I would focus on the most important materials, the dominant material. In this scene, I have a dominant floor, I have a dominant wall, I have a dominant ceiling, and also the textiles are somewhat dominant. So what I would do, I would first decrease the model size to what's most important for me, set up the settings, and then move on. This can be easily done by using the layer management of the software. Now, to filter the model, you can either start from the 2D, filter it, and regenerate the 3D. But if you already have the model fully generated, you can do the same thing here. All you need to do is just to open up the layer walk.
Yes.
And here you can find all those layers that you have created. My suggestion is that you should, at least if you're working on an interior design like we do now here, you should at least distinguish what you have from room to room. So separate the content as accessories in one room, furniture in one room, and lamps in one room, and the rest can go anywhere else, because usually the interior is the most complex. If you work with exterior scenes, you can do the same thing just with the foliage and the other things like that. So what you will do, you will just disable the less important things for now. Let me just remove all these things that will keep floating over there. But anyway, what we see now is just the surfaces. What I can see here is quite a reflective floor. Let me just move the zoom someplace like this, so we can see easily that it's very much reflective. So to cover how this works, you can go to the Find Materials option, and there you can find the same settings. Now, if this is set to be mirror, this will be usually a perfect reflective surface.
Well, that's a bit too much, I think.
Yeah, it's a bit too much. Well, I could also tweak this. I could go and set up a blurriness for reflection, and then the reflection will be less of a perfect reflection, but it will be more like a metal-like surface. But if I would like to, then I can go and select something else from here. Like, for example,
you have preset options available for these elements.
Yeah, actually, I can turn this into pocket. There will be some nice setting coming with that. The software recalculates this whole thing, and it will be a little bit glossy pocket surface. Or I can use something else like the general surface. Now, talking about general, let's use it here on this wall surface. Let's just find this wall material and see what this has. If I right-click here,
find material.
Yeah, that's right.
Good
so
one.
Find, yeah, and then let's just go there. This is actually matte, which seems to be working fine, but actually in reality we are not surrounded with matte surfaces, not that much. Very few indeed are real matte surfaces. Most of them would fit mainly into those other categories, or if you cannot find them, in general. And what you should do, you should always add a little glossiness, a little reflection to your surface. And what I will show you is, it's another important, interesting thing, is that you add some reflection to this.
Yes.
Let me just add a little bit of blurriness, a little bit more reflection. But it's still not reflecting anything. Why is that? It's because of this Fresnel effect here. If I disable that...
What is that?
So it's like metal now. It's reflecting a lot, and it's metal-like because it is reflective but blurry as well. So if I just increase this is much better, but still not what I want. If I enable this, then I will get a realistic surface, which is reflective, but it's reflective like our wall is reflective. Not that much, but from certain angles it will be reflective. Like this here. If I turn the camera to this side view,
then you start to see the reflection, right?
Then let me just zoom in a little bit more so we are not distracted by this lamp here. So here I should see some of these reflections appearing, but it also depends on the refraction of this item. So if I increase that, this will come a little bit more, or if I decrease that, or if I increase the reflection, then it will increase or decrease this feature, which most of the surfaces around us, they have this feature.
So it seems to me that the rendering process in this respect is mostly about tweaking the settings until you find the right result. So there's no clear-cut and automated way to reach the final result, right?
Well, sooner or later you will end up a lot of materials that you like, that is for your taste, that you created. You can use those. You can if you find a good setting, you can save that in your libraries and you can use that as a basis for the new materials. But also the software, just as in other cases, it is shipped with built-in materials. So if nothing else, then you can just do and find something that is, for example, we have built-in material for the bright white ceiling. We have built-in materials for the wallpapers. We have built-in materials for flooring and so on. So you can find those and check their settings and adapt that to your own material, to your own fabric or whatever you create for that moment.
Perfect. Now, we showed a couple of renderings here. We mostly talked about the interior, the integrated renders, but we also have a standalone, separate rendering engine. So how does that work?
Well, if you would like to work with third-party renderers, so if you do not want to, for any reason, do not want to use the built-in renderer because, for example, you already have a license for example, for Atlantis, then you can use that. To be able to use those rendering engines, what you need to do is to actually export the model to those renders, and then you can just go to, well, you just build up the model that you would like to visualize, and then you go to File and Export, and you just find those, yeah, that's right, you just find those rendering engine outputs that you would like to create, like Atlantis, Cinema, Thea, or all these, or for example, most of them, they also support FBX, or they also support SKP, 3ds, OBJ. You can use these file formats to export your data. But staying within ARCHLine, if you're talking about that you just would like to create something of a production quality instead of the draft quality, well, in that case, what you need to do is to, instead of rendering it in real time, you should create a final version, either integrated, but let me show you the standalone rendering for that. I just closed this because I don't want to too much overheat my computer. So what I do here, I just start the same thing, just this case in a separate window, and then I launch the rendering. But just before I do that, I forgot to mention one important thing, that there is this render frame on and off option, which is connected to this value. If I enlarge this 3D window, you will see, let me just change the size of it because it's too...
this is actually exactly the same
yeah, it's nearly
ratio,
the same, yeah. So let me just squish it a bit, and now you can see some gray areas. This is actually what the camera will perfectly see. So if I set up the view that I have, which is a 1-bedroom, 1-2, this is what I will render. If I'm fine with that, I can go with that. If I would like to turn the camera to little bit to the right because I don't want to see this, which is now fine. But if I don't want to do that, then with this way I can easily find a perfect view that represents only the things that I'm interested in. And then I'm going to rendering and find standalone rendering, and then just simply hit rendering, and then the process is the same. Everything is generated again and it will be passed to the renderer, but this time we do some finals, some final renders.
But meanwhile, you could be doing some work in ARCHLine, right? Because whatever you are going to do with the model now is not going to influence the render here.
Yes, that's right, and that's something that you can do. But if you do the finals, I won't usually recommend that, because rendering is using a lot of your CPU and RAM. It's not using the GPU at the moment. It's using the CPU and the RAM, but it is using it heavily, as much as possible. So if you would like to create your finals and you would like to finish them, you should leave their work, just do their work, and then just save the finals, which actually is done automatically as well by the software. You can set up an autosave path. But I always suggest to save the model, the rendering at the end as well. And what we can see now is quite different from the one that we saw before.
Yes, it's called a different way of putting up.
It's like an analytic creation of the model first, and then to be able to create a precise nice, fine, good quality render at the end. And after these things comes the so-called ray tracing, when the renderer literally traces all the lights coming to the image that we have in front of us, and then it will generate the final image, which at the end with this button, when it appears available, we can save. Now what we see here is this. In the details, it's the high detail render, which is the slowest. This will take the most long time. So I actually don't wait for that. I would like to show you another result. So I just terminate here, and I select something called the interior, or even the exterior will work here. Let me show you that. What happens here? Something similar, just much faster, and the result appears at the end. Crisp, clear. Everything will be
and
just as smooth
starts to clear
as
it up, right? Bit by bit.
Yeah. So it will take a few minutes, but at the end it will be some very smooth, nice images. So if the exterior, the fastest next to draft, creates a clean image, why would I use the others? Why would I use interior, and why would I use high detail even when it takes like this? Probably takes an hour compared to this, and the exterior will finish in a few minutes. So why use that?
Now, any tips on how to influence the result even before it's finished? I know that it's not a draft, so it's going to be a final render, but is there any way to tweak what I see into something what I prefer?
Yeah, before that, let me finish this here.
Yes,
it's just I just wanted to show the image, because besides this, if I would render this in exterior, in interior, and in final, the most detailed, I would get the same exact result, and it's because it is a well-lit environment. The lights are traveling nicely in this environment. There is less diffuse lights. If I have a lot of diffuse lights, I prepared something for that, and during this is continuing to render. So now I have something. This was rendered with the exterior. See, it's crispy,
pretty
noisy, and not something that I like. It's simply because there was not enough time to calculate the final image. I just told render exterior, and that this is much time that you have got. So it could not finish it well. So if I use the interior, which is better. Now if I zoom in, I can still see a little bit of crispiness here, but it's not that much. Here actually, this is actually already clear, so I could say that I'm fine with that, and let's just go with that. Then perhaps this could take a little longer, but if I go with the detail, this is the cleanest version in this certain situation. As you see, if the environment is not well lit, there is even no sunlight outside, then it is useful to have these steps. But if your environment is very well lit, then you very much will go much better with the others. So, answering your earlier question to how to make changes for the rendering, actually this you can do during rendering. First, I stressed out using the exposure. So, in case of interior renderings, usually you will need to increase this. So the default value is not that value because it will work everywhere. It's just a default value. You should increase to a point when you like the result and you say that this is as much as bright. I would like to see my whites, my white areas. This will sometimes a little bit wash out some of the colors, but if you make it change it wisely, you will end up with the same vivid result, just with a brighter version, like there is more light coming in. Then you can go with the brightness. I just stress don't overuse them. Just change them a little bit if you want. If you don't like the result, just push this button and it will jump back to the default. You can change the saturation. I don't change it too much, just a little bit. You can make the dark areas a little bit more strong. You can increase or decrease how the mid-tones are stressed out, and the highlights as well. See, but use them wisely. If you just work.
Again, this is trial and error, right? So obviously, after a while, you would have an educated guess, but until that, you would just have to experiment with these settings.
That's right. And at the end, if it's done, you can still work on these things, and you can save version 1, version 2, version 3. I think now the shadows are too strong because I lost a lot of information here. So I just dial this down like this. And then I just save one version, another version, brighter or darker, and so on. And then at the end, I compare it in an image viewer and I keep the best.
Perfect.
So that's how you can do that. And And in the details, you can change all those settings, but for these things, you will always have to re-render the scene.
Yes.
For these effects, you just need to change them and they will appear automatically.
That's right. I think at this point it would make sense to talk about some tips on the rendering time and the rendering quality because I look at the questions what the viewers are asking us, and it's most of the questions are about how demanding the rendering is on your computer and how you can tweak the settings and what kind of settings you would have and what kind of resources you would need to have on your computer in order to have the right results. So a couple of tips on the rendering time and quality factors that will be handy.
Yeah, I think these pretty much cover that topic, but to give you an idea mostly it's about the computing power that you have. And this computer, just as I told you, this is an i7. It's a quite powerful computer. But this morning I used another computer. It's an i5. And it's also an older version of an i5, which was created like 5 or 6 years ago, if I remember well. And that still performs good. But of course, less powerful, and it takes more time. Usually, if you would like to avoid long renders, all you need to do is filter your scene for lights, filter your scene for geometry to remove things that you don't want to see or you actually cannot see. So when you, for example, generate a model of a building, like we are sitting here, I do render to that direction. There are other rooms filled up with lights and objects and things like that. To be able to achieve the best rendering result, I mean, in terms of rendering time, I should turn off everything that I already know that they won't be visible. Because if I just give the whole model to the renderer, then I force it to calculate things that I already know they won't exist. But for the rendering engine, it's a matter of time of calculation. Like this here, this is a good idea.
Yes,
this is a
very good example. This whole apartment was well designed, but since we didn't need the rest of the drawing, only this particular bedroom, we switched off those parts, layers that we didn't need.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, even if you wouldn't see it on the renders, those elements would be calculated anyway.
Yeah. So at the end, they won't be visible, of course, in the rendering. But for a software, it's a matter of calculation to determine whether it's visible or not.
Yes.
So to conserve that time that I already know this should not be calculated, I just simply don't give that to the renderer. So I just turn them off. I use the layering system to turn everything off that is not necessary for that specific scene, and then I render it.
That's right. Now, another good idea regarding renders, because it's an up and coming topic that that you have to show your clients the best you could how your model would turn out, and I think a very good way to do that would be a 360 render where you could just take a look around, or at least a 360 image where you could just take a look around and see the space around you. Now, how would you create something like that?
Yeah, Panoramic 360, which ARCHLine.XP supports built-in, is a very good way. Even if it's only a draft, it's something that you could use well, but also ARCHLine is able to perform this in rendered result. You can find this feature here in the view, and there is Panoramic 360, and those are the settings for that. Actually, first you need to set up at least 2 cameras, because then you can set up a link between them. So what you do, you just place the camera, name it accordingly where you would like to use it. I just use it, name it as bedroom. You can actually place not only one camera, but this time the model is not too much large, so I just place one camera. Mm-hmm. I just place it here, and then I will also place one in the corridor. This could be also 1, 2, but I just place one. And then I just don't do that anymore. I rotate the camera using the rotation marker, set up the default view that the camera will use, the software will use when you enter that room. This will be the first shot that you will see. Also the same thing for the corridor camera. Let's just rotate that 90 degrees and just move it someplace like here.
Yes. And
so
I guess there should be some connection between the 2 cameras.
Yeah. That's what we call a portal here. You can set up a hotspot between these 2. So this hotspot will link in a certain elevation. It will link this camera to this camera there and back. So when I'm at this point, I can travel back to the corridor and the other way around. I don't want to place another one, so I have already a camera, another one, and the link between these two. So if I actually select this link point, this portal, this will be automatically represented that it has two ends, which is good. So now to be able to see what happens, I should also check first what these cameras see. So what I use here is the view camera. I just click here, and then the software steps into that camera and show me what happens. Let me just enlarge this. So this is what the first camera will see. Yes. It's not the best, so let me just select this and move it a bit more backwards someplace here, and then let's just retest it again. Let's just go and view this camera. What this camera sees is now it's a bit more something that I like. So the same thing I can do with the other one. And then to generate this, I could use this virtual tour in draft mode, and I can use it in render mode. The draft mode is actually what we see. So if I use this, let me just save it here. I think this will be just fine. And then the software generates it. It generates a panoramic 360s at certain points, and then this is what happens.
Mm-hmm. So it stores it into an HTML file.
Yeah, and it actually auto starts this whole thing. I can grab it and I can look around, up and down in this draft quality, and there's the portal that I've set here. If I click on the corridor, I end up in the corridor, and that's the door of the bedroom. So I can just look around.
It's a good way to give them a concept of space, I guess, because that way you can just take a look around and see how it feels around you.
Yeah, let me show you the final version of this, because I actually already have a full-featured, rich version of this. With, for example, the first one is the same thing, just it is starting from the bedroom. Also using traveling points like this here. I can go to the living room to check that living room, but this is still not rendered. This is not that much realistic.
Just
so
a draft.
To be able to represent that in a realistic view, you should use the other option to render it, and then you will end up with something like this.
Okay, so that's a final render, right?
This is a final render, but also this took way longer than the other one. The other one, as you saw in real time, it happened in a matter of seconds. But rendering a scene like this in 360, that takes quite a long. This, I think it took like 10 hours to render, but it's not only two rooms, it has like 3 or 4 rooms there where you can travel. So each and every rooms were rendered 360 and then generated in a high quality image like this. So actually this way you can travel it through.
Perfect. Actually, there's a way to get this onto into your clients' heads. I'm not sure if you are familiar with these devices. It's called a VR box. The way it works is that you are able to load your project in an HTML file onto a smartphone, put the smartphone in this holder, put it in these goggles, and then put it on your client's head. I'm not gonna do that right now. We have a video to demonstrate that, because I think I would look silly with this with my head. But so the concept is this basically. Let me just show you.
So in this video, what you will see is that you set up this thing, you paste it into the camera, and then what you end up with is something that because of the gyro of this phone, you can look around, and in the meantime I will, if you cannot show that at the end for some reason, I can show it here as well.
Yes,
perhaps we have a technical difficulty here.
Yeah, we'll return to that matter in a second.
Yeah. So actually, what you will find is something that you can look around, and then you can still travel through these points.
Yes.
Using that VR experience. I think I have.
If we have the video in a separate file, I think we can show that. So then again, this will not actually allow the customers to interact with the objects, but I think this would be a very good way to. So like I said, it would not allow the customers to interact with the objects, but they would be able to sort of move around from scene to scene, and that would allow them to better imagine the space around them, right? Because like you said, because of that gyroscope, they would be able to, as they turn their heads, see the space around them.
Yeah, that's right. So this is what they will see in the phone, and when you set that up, you will see, actually, what you will see is something like this, a split screen view, and this way you can just travel through to room and just turn your head around and just do this.
Just zoom on the
thing.
portal and then you just move from one space to the other. What about animation? So how can we get animated results from these? Because I think VR would be one way, but if there would be a way to sort of pan around the rooms, that would be a good solution too.
Yeah, and before we move on, just one thing that we talked about this cheaper version of VR when you don't have to invest, I don't know, $1,000 or something like that. But if you would like to use it with a dedicated computer with this VR thing, you can check these export formats and check if you can work with that in that environment. So going back to animation, animation is here. Animation is not an object animation, so you cannot animate, I don't know, cars moving or something. This is camera walkthrough animation. When you animate the camera going through the model, and then the animation will be rendered in this quality, what you can see at the right hand side. This won't be a photorealistic result, it will be something that we can see here at the right hand side. So how to do that? First, you need to set up a path. This will be the path of movement of your camera. Let's start from here, go through here, and let's just draw this path like this, like a nice curvy path, and then here. And then what you need to do is to set up the point of interest from each and every spot of your path.
So where you're actually looking at.
Yeah. So here I think I will just nicely turn to this point of this model. So I just hit enter, and then I just hit OK to preview what I've got here. Now actually I need to open this door a bit so we are not just passing through a closed door. It's like 75 like that, and yeah, let's just update this view again. So this is something that you can easily do by simply just going to the details and say, well, this door should be opened. I think I changed the correct value. Let's just change it again.
75% was
75%. Yeah, like this is now open. Let me just check in the model. Yeah, it's open, fine. And let me just go back to this path and say, okay, preview this. So now this is what I've got. If I hit the play, then it goes through. It's a bit fast, I believe. So what we should do is, let me just stop that, go back to the beginning and change its settings. First off, the length, and let's just play it again. Okay, it's much better, less hasty. Let's just go back. And then what you can do at certain points, these are key points, you can change where the camera is. So you can lower the camera here, and you can lower the camera here perhaps. Mm-hmm. You can change the position of the camera, and then what the software does, it auto-animates this using these updated
the heights.
So you can just elevate the camera, go through, and then decrease the. So you can do all these movements in the key points, and the software will animate those through. And as you can see, you should select a panoramic background for that, because now I just used an image. For this is not the best. ARCHLine is shipped with panoramic backgrounds as well. So yeah.
Perfect. Now, a couple of times it came up that, you know, what happens when you want to do exterior rendering. I think before we actually talk about that, can we show an animation example of a building from the outside? So how would you go about that? Let's just bring up the project that we were working on before.
Yeah, I think this will be the final version of what we achieved at the documentation part. This is
So let's see what happens if you just want to animate certain viewpoints on the very same object.
Yeah, so now we have this here, and if I would like to create like a pan camera panning around this building, what I would do, I just again do the same thing. I just set up a point here, and perhaps a point there, and then just enter and set up the view to perhaps the same point, but sometimes you can move it, and then say enter and okay, and the software will create the same preview. Now we have no surrounding, this is just rough.
Yes.
But if I turn on the surrounding and do the same thing, I can do this same animation from outside.
What kind of format can you save this into?
This can be saved in an AVI file, as you can see. This you can use third-party converters to convert to anything, but this is already something that you can either export or upload to your YouTube account to share with your clients, or just directly send them. Usually direct sending is not the best for the AVI files because they are quite large,
yes,
but
you can,
online sharing is
you can
very
upload
much
them
good.
somewhere.
Yeah.
You differentiated between interior and exterior renders quite a few times. So what are the specialties of an exterior render?
Yeah, for an exterior render, first things first, background comes more important. So first things first, what you need to set up well is the background. Sometimes a photograph will do, but if you would like to create a lot of views, then you should set up a few render backgrounds at the rendering, or at least find a nice panoramic background, which actually you can also do in the 3D as well. So you can go and find the environment background setting, and instead of using a uniform color, which I do have now, I can set up a panoramic something like this here, or I can go with this sunny plane or anything else and then say okay, and then the software creates this view around this, and then I can render it. And what I stress out doing these renders, I think I will just simply do a draft and render for now. Yeah, you should enable sunlight, but you don't have to enable sunlight. If you turn off sunlight, you will end up with a day like what we do have now here, when the sunlight is not directly hitting your model, but instead of that you will have some nice diffuse lights and shadows. So you can do that. If you would like to create a nighttime scenery, you should set up the nighttime setting using the settings of the location and things like that, and then you can turn on the artificial lights also in the interior. Take care of the background brightness. In case of exterior scenes, these are the suggested values here at the higher part of this thing. If you are using an interior scene, you should use those settings to avoid over or underexposed backgrounds. And to show you some other thing, I should also highlight how you should set up the effects. In case of effects, again, now this exposure that we can see at the left-hand side, it's 330. It's again not that because it's the best, it's just the default setting, which as you can see in exterior scenes, sometimes you just simply need to decrease to something much better to have no kind of burnout surfaces. Now I have quite a lot. If I increase it to the value that was good for the interior, see, you will end up with something that is not.
So like I said before, that it's mostly trial and error, and one recipe would not necessarily fit another scenario.
Yeah, and this simply is because the rendering now is having a lot of direct light sources. You have tons of millions of photons hitting your model, so you have enough information. You don't need to open up the shutter that much long. And the others are the same. You can also set up different views, like we did with this model before. So you just change the view, and now because we have that's actually the back of the model.
Yes.
So if you set up
these are the preset views what we set up during the first session, I think.
Yeah.
When we set up the views from which you are going to see the models, so then they are going to be stored here in the rendering window as well. So you can just pull them up and generate renders from them.
Yeah, and actually this works as like a drawing. You can just zoom in, zoom out. You can just handle it in a way that if it's a large image, that like you need to create I don't know, like a very large image, even larger than a full HD, then you need to zoom in and find the best things for your model.
Perfect. That's great. There's a couple of questions actually, okay. So I think we should cover them. I think we can fit that into our time. So there was a question on whether the rendering would be mostly GPU or CPU heavy. And we already established that it's going to be more demanding towards the CPU. Right?
It's 0 GPU at the moment and full CPU, and the RAM is used a lot.
Regarding the LED light strips, can you add arc shaped and any shape light effect in addition to linear shapes?
Yes, you can either use the LED light to draft an arc-shaped path, either by doing when you draw it or changing the existing path. And another thing that I did not highlight, but you can use it anytime if you have any sort of body of something that you would like to emit lights, then you can use the material type so-called the luminous or lighting material. This will literally light up the scene. It will really literally emit photons. It will bright up the scene, so you can use that as well.
Perfect. Question: can ARCHLine create its own seamless textures? I think that's because he saw the wallpaper.
Yeah. Well, there are built-in tools which you can use to edit a certain fabric or a pattern. which is clipping the image and then save that clipped image into a new material file. This you can do definitely. But if you have to retouch the image, like for example it is overexposed or there is something that you need to do in Photoshop, then do it in Photoshop. That's something that you need to decide. Look at the image, and if the image has some brighter features and some features in the shadow or shaded, then this is something that you should do in a photo manipulator. And if it's only like geometric issues, like the repetition is not good, you need to crop the image. That you can do in ARCHLine.
That's right. Another question: any rules to keep a typical BIM model rendering time low, especially with given details, for example, furniture, architectural detailing, etc.? Would you copy out the model clip to reduce render times? Any advice on that? I think this is exactly when we would be using the layers to separate certain elements, just like just the way we did with that apartment that we showed before. Elements that you don't want to render, furniture, objects, you would just copy to another layer, disable them. That would switch them on the 2D, 3D, and the rendering viewports as well.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And about typical rendering times, I think I gave a few about that. But actually, going back to the previous render, which was a quite detailed interior, as you saw. Draft is a matter of seconds. Exterior is a matter of minutes. Interior would be a matter of like 15 or 20 minutes. And I believe detailed would take like an hour if we render it in HD.
Yes.
Like that.
That's why you have to know the right settings before you embark on that. Question: what controls do you have on the camera, field of vision, depth of field, etc.? I think that this question either could refer to the actual cameras, what we put down to the walkthrough, or for the actual views in the software. I think both work pretty much the same way.
Yeah, the FOV you can change by just simply changing the angle of the camera. You know, the viewing angle. And the depth of field, that's something that is not supported currently.
Yes, actually, on how to set up the views, we covered that during the first session, I think.
Yeah.
Or yes.
I believe yes.
Can you export to Qubity? I think this is news to us.
Well, it's a new thing. We can check, and we can give you an answer in somewhere.
Thank you very much for the questions. I think that again, these questions kept the content pretty relevant. And again, if you are here, that means that you made it. You just finished the 5th installment of our webinar series called Gateway to BIM. Congratulations. We covered everything from beginning to end. So the next sessions are going to be on obviously different topics, but we are going to be definitely back with other amazing topics and tips on how to improve your skills in ARCHLine. Even if you're not a user yet, these are very valuable CAD and BIM tips. So I think it's definitely worth a listen. We enjoyed it very much. I hope you enjoyed